It's not a dilemma for me, but for everyone else, or a lot of people. I shouldn't say everyone, for a number of people. This is a dilemma. And I'm going to explain why. Caitlyn Jenner has made public comments in regards to NCAA swimmer Leah Thompson. Caitlyn Jenner's official position, as I understand, and I will correct myself if I'm wrong, but Caitlyn Jenner's official position is that Leah Thompson should not be allowed to compete in the women's swimming competition for the NCAA. Now, the rationale for Caitlyn Jenner's position is that she said Leah Thompson was born a biological male. And so, if you're born a biological male, you shouldn't be able to compete in women's athletics, is Caitlyn Jenner's argument. Okay. You say, what's the dilemma in this? There's more. Caitlyn Jenner says, I would never compete against women in a sporting competition. Well, wait a minute. Caitlyn, that's being disingenuous. We have to be honest. Caitlyn Jenner is 72 years of age. It's not like you're going to be playing sports at 72. I mean, professional athletic sport. You can go outside and play sports with your friends. But we all know a 72-year-old is not going to compete in the Olympics. They're kind of aged out. They've hit the retirement age. Nothing wrong with that. But Leah Thompson is not 72. She's 28. So for Caitlyn Jenner to sit there and say what she wouldn't do now at 72 is being disingenuous to what she might do or would have done had she been 28. Caitlyn Jenner is an Olympic gold medalist winner. The decathlete. So by her logic, had she wanted to compete in the Olympics and transition at the time, she wouldn't have been allowed to compete in the Women's Olympics. Nor would she have been allowed to compete in the Men's Olympics. Because if you're transitioning, you cannot compete in the men's athletics. You're transitioning to become a woman. So if Caitlyn Jenner says she always was a woman, then why wouldn't that Olympic gold medal winning decathlete that occurred Why would it not constitute or be considered Caitlyn Jenner's gold medalist? We don't use her dead name. So the gold medalist winner is Caitlyn Jenner. Am I the only one here following along with this logic? And so, if Caitlyn Jenner doesn't want Leah Thompson to compete in women's athletics, and she doesn't want her to compete in men's athletics either, then you have to ask yourself, where do trans youth fit into sports? Are they not supposed to play sports? Because people feel uncomfortable? You know, that argument isn't new in American sports. Jackie Robinson in 1947 broke the racial barrier in baseball. For so long, Black Americans played baseball only with Black Americans, and white Americans played baseball only with white Americans. It was unheard of that a black baseball player could play on a predominantly white baseball team. Of course, no white baseball players wanted to play on the black baseball teams. There was no revenue. It was just a hobby or an occasion in the black community to play baseball. But they weren't making money like the white baseball players were doing. So when people talk about breaking a barrier, we have to be honest why the barrier needed to be broken in the first place. It was out of financial hardship. People who love sports wanted to play sports. But shocking, they have a family too. And they need to feed their family. So they need to be compensated if they're going to play a professional sport. So Jackie Robinson didn't just want to be on an all-white baseball team. He wanted the same benefits afforded that the white baseball players were receiving, that the black baseball players and teams weren't receiving. And that was the barrier he was attempting to break. With few friends, this was controversial. The fans hated it. The other teams detested it. His own team was awful towards him. This is all documented. This is all facts. You go and you look it up. It wasn't that Jackie Robinson got to Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, that he was shown affection. They were in Philadelphia. And some of the crowd and the teammates were saying all kinds of racist things as Jackie Robinson was on base. Now, Jackie Robinson was known for being really fast. If you blink, you miss him, and he'd steal a base. And then if you blink, you miss him, he'd steal another base. Baseball legend. Nobody can wear the number 42 because nobody comes as great as Jackie Robinson. Nobody. He was literally the Flash on the bases. It drove the opposing teams crazy. They hated him. So they used all types of racial slurs and epithets to try to psychologically torture him. One of the members from the dugout in Philadelphia runs up to Jackie Robinson. True story. And he told Jackie Robinson, you know, you're not on my team. And I'm rooting against you. But you hear all that shit they're saying. We don't all feel that way. Now play ball. And he ran back into the dugout. Philadelphia, you've always been a real one. We know. UPenn made the decision to allow Leah Thompson to return to the women's swimming team. This decision had already been made a couple of years back. But due to the transition, due to COVID, and a whole host of other factors, Leah Thompson took some time off. So this whole notion that this was a new occurrence is false. The NCAA had already agreed to this years ago. Leah just took some time off. However, yours truly, the Sour Cream Brigade, you know, the people that say, Jesus loves you, except all the people that Jesus hates and condemns and tells they're going to hell. You know the sign guys that hold a sign stating that everybody's going to hell. Isn't that kind of contradictory to Jesus loves you? Nobody ever asks us that question. Just saying. Anyway, the Sour Cream Brigade got all sour about this. And they're the ones that's been raising all of this kerfluffle. And they had to go out and ask Caitlyn Jenner. And I understand. She might really be attuned to that position. But you conservatives, you have a dilemma here. Because you say Leah Thompson transitioned after already having competed in the men's sports. But then you're also telling youth that they shouldn't be allowed to transition. So here it is, children. You're banning them from playing sports. They're young. They're very young. They haven't even matured. And they've already determined they want to transition. banning them from playing sports with their friends. But yet, you're using the same argument to say Leah Thompson shouldn't compete in the women's sports. Here it is, an 8-year-old girl wants to compete. And you're saying ban her because she's transgender. So should transgender people not be allowed to play sports? Is that really the conservative answer? Because apparently that's what it looks like it is. You don't want the kids in public school who are transgender to play in sports. You don't want Leah Thompson, who's in college, to play any sports. So sports are not for transgender youth? You don't see that's exactly how and what they did to Black Americans in this country? The biggest hang-up to Jackie Robinson was fear. Jackie Robinson spoke about this. There were all these stories about how Jackie Robinson was going to hurt his white teammates. He was going to fight and beat them up. And they had read all of these things about black people, but had never actually met any black people, let alone played sports with them. So all of their notions and beliefs were based in fear. And when those fears didn't materialize because Jackie Robinson didn't do the things that they had read about, or that their parents told them, swore up and down, that was going to occur to them. When those things didn't happen, slowly but surely, they started changing their outlook on Jackie Robinson, the individual. See, it's kind of hard to hate up close, but it's easier to hate off in the distance. When people actually play sports with Jackie Robinson, they said, I don't give a damn that he doesn't look like me. He's a damn good baseball player. They didn't give a fuck. But they wouldn't have had that concept or notion had the barrier not been broken. Leah Thompson is a barrier breaker. You can't say that we don't still have barriers in sports. Ableism is huge. We don't incorporate ableism into any of our mainstream sports concepts. We don't fund it the same way we do. Sure, you hear about the Special Olympics. But in order to get to the Olympics, these individuals had to be the best in what they already do. Sometimes you never even hear about these competitions in the Special Olympics. They happen in your local community. and you don't know. Why is that? Because there's a barrier that hasn't been broken. The role of sports in society has always played a uniting factor. Sports doesn't care about how you look, how you speak, how tall, how short. Sports is solely about the pursuit of competition, the pursuit of perfecting your skill, your craft and ability. And we always learned in sport, win or lose, you're a champion. You're a good sport. You congratulate your opponent in loss and in victory. So when Caitlyn Jenner said she agreed with Ron DeSantis, saying that the rightful winner wasn't Leah Thompson, that's unsportsmanlike conduct. Unsportsmanwoman-like conduct. Because if you lose, you lose. You hear it all the time. You win some, you lose some. But with conservatives nowadays, they always say rock starts from the top. When you have a sore loser as your commander-in-chief, ex-commander-in-chief, thank goodness. When you have a sore loser who goes around the country telling you for years and years that he didn't lose an election, it was stolen, but cannot provide proof, that sort of kind of seeps down to, well, your local level lunatic. I'm telling you, November, we gotta throw all of those bums out. Just take a broom and sweep them all away. Don't worry, we have a plan to do just that. But they're trying to make this political, when in reality, it's about a human right. Sports has never been really solely political. It's had some political overtures to it, of course. The Olympics was created as a way to bring the world together after world wars. So it does have political contours to it. But the apparatus and system of sports itself is apolitical. No matter what your political affiliation is, if you can dribble the ball and shoot threes in the hoop, you're on the team. So LeBron James could be a stark raving progressive, but if he was no good in basketball, they wouldn't pay him any money. They don't call him King LeBron for no reason, Candace. He's really good at basketball. Fuck what you say. Some people say Michael Jordan and LeBron James. I don't compare greatness. They're two different type of players. Two. Michael had the agility. Michael had teammates like Scottie Pippen. LeBron James is like a bulldozer. So you can't compare the two. because they played at different eras in time too. Basketball looked different in Michael Jordan's era than it does now in LeBron James' era. But I say all of that to say that sports is about skill and talent. It's not about gender. You think I can swim as fast as Leah Thompson? Hell no. There's plenty of men that Leah Thompson can wipe the floor with. Just like there's plenty of women that Leah Thompson can wipe the floor with. This whole notion that now sports is predicated on biology is ludicrous. Now you're going to say, well, why do they have men's and women's leagues? You have men and women who compete up against each other in sports. But preference-wise, men choose to want to compete against men. And women choose to want to compete against women. And therefore you form a league because of preference. It doesn't necessarily have to do with ability or skill. Please understand this. It's a preference issue and not a skill issue. Now there's some argument or debate as to how long an individual should be in treatment, getting hormonal therapy. The NCAA has done a good job abiding by its standards and rules it set forth. The only people who don't like that are the sour cream brigade, who also don't want public school children to play sports in school to conform to their preference. Look, if a child in public school, K through 12, prefers to play on one team or the other, are you going to really make a big deal about that? The limited government, get this, the limited government party, as it bills itself, is now in your local public school telling your child that they cannot play sports in school. I want you to really think about this and what it means. Your child now is going to be sorely depressed that they cannot play with their friends because your local congressman, your local mayor, your local governor has decided that they want to score cheap political points by playing to a fringe, fanatic, zealot constituency in America, who would like to see nothing more than the complete elimination of transgender people. This is a fact of what they're doing. They're playing to a fringe. They're appealing to a fringe. This was not a firestorm issue in any public school across America. How do I know this? Because there was transgender youth who have been playing on their sports teams for years. And none of the students were complaining None of the parents were complaining. People online who didn't live in the community started posting out private information about people who they did not know, telling community residents that this person is transgender in your school. This is how this started. Far-right fringe activists online started outing transgender youth in public schools. Gone is privacy. And these are the people that are for limited government. I want you to understand this. They say limited government. Your child can't play sports because they've signed laws stating so. Your child can't read certain books because they've signed laws stating so. Your child cannot talk about your family unit and structure because if they mention that they have two mommies or two daddies at home, that's considered grooming and not age appropriate. They're trying to criminalize your right. You're given rights. Again, it took a long time to come to the conclusion that everyone should be afforded basic. Well, not all basic, because we still haven't gotten to all basic fundamental rights. There's a bunch that people don't know that they have. A whole bunch. And just like that, the conservatives are rolling it back. They're saying, no, women, you don't have the right to privacy and self-determination. No, black people, you don't have the right to vote in America. No, transgender youth, you don't have a right to play sports in public school. They're trying to subtract, not add. And when you subtract a right, you harm a large percentage of your population because you're taking something away that's been a benefit. And it's not like they're replacing it with anything besides bigotry. We can't teach critical race theory, but we can teach Confederacy. Are you going to tell the children what those Confederate generals did to other human beings? No. You're just going to stick a statue up. This is why the youth are rebelling in mass. They're sick of this shit. And I don't blame them. As well they should be. Leah Thompson's teammates, just like Jackie Robinson's teammates, are sticking by her side. Because they're closest impacted to the situation. You can bring on someone like Caitlyn Jenner, who's an athlete and a gold medalist, and pretend that she speaks for a younger generation, an evolving generation. You can pretend all you want. But what I see is a 72-year-old woman who knows she's speaking from a place that's not consistent with where she would have been had she been 28 and transitioned. You know, I found that disingenuous. Why would Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham bring on Caitlyn Jenner at 72 years of age to have her opine about a 28-year-old playing sports? Do we do that for anything else? Well, in politics we do. We bring on a lot of elderly to opine about the problems the youth are going through. And you see how well that's working out in politics. No, I think it's a generational thing too. I think that can't be understated. Caitlyn Jenner is 72 years old. Look, there's nothing wrong with this. But she's opining about a 28-year-old playing sports. That's generally the age when people play sports in their youth. They don't play competitive sports at 72, Sean Hannity. So the real question is, would a 28-year-old Caitlyn Jenner, who was transitioning, would she not have wanted to compete in the Olympics? That's the real question. What they're trying to do is compare apples to oranges and tell you it's the same thing. No. Fuck what they're telling you. Someone who's 72 is opining about someone who is 28 and saying what they shouldn't do. Because at their age, Caitlyn Jenner said at her age, she wouldn't do competitive sports. Well, of course, you're retired, Caitlyn. Your argument made no logical sense, Caitlyn. And that's why a lot of people disagreed with it. I didn't get all bent out of shape and take it personally. Leah Thompson didn't either. You don't think there were baseball players that said that Jackie Robinson shouldn't compete on an all-white baseball team? Hell yeah, they went and interviewed a lot of players that said this. Said he had unfair advantages. Back then there was a lot of pseudoscience. Black people are naturally faster. So it's unfair that Jackie Robinson should play with us. Look at how tall he is. That gives him an unfair advantage over the pitcher. All of this kind of shit was said about Jackie Robinson. Look, who wants to smoke? Who wants to fucking smoke? I'm serving it out this year in 2022. If you want it, come get it. They said all that fucking pseudoscience junk shit about Jackie Robinson, just like they're saying about Leah Thompson. And it was bullshit then, and it's bullshit now. The role of sports has always been inclusive and not exclusive. If you're a kid in Pakistan and you love cricket, you can go to Britain and you can play one day on the British cricket team because you love cricket and you're good at cricket. Sports is inclusive, not exclusive. this whole sour cream brigade narrative of trying to create an exclusive sport world is nothing new because we had it before. Last summer, almost to this day, I made a video about Brett Favre because he said trans youth shouldn't play sports, shouldn't be allowed to play on women's teams if they're trans women. But he didn't give an answer to where trans women should be allowed to play. I've heard some people say they should start their own league. How about you crafted a legal, lawful legislative bill in Utah to target 4 transgender students in the entire state? You crafted a whole fucking law to target 4 American citizens to tell them they cannot do something. You don't think that's a little crazy and extreme? I do. So you're going to start your league with 4 people? Because that's how many students are transgender in the public school system in Utah. Now let me ask you a question. Would it be more practical to have those students choose their preference over 4 people starting a league? Which one is going to be more practical, would you say? This is pure bigotry and hatred. And we must stand up to it. We did in 1947. And we will again in 2022. Pure bigotry and hatred. Driven by fear. Former President Roosevelt said it best. There is nothing to fear besides fear itself. We cannot let people, no matter who they are, to allow us to fear our own citizens, our own neighbors, our own family. We cannot allow it and then say we're united. It doesn't seem like that's a united front to me. When you're taking away people's voting rights, when you're taking away people's privacy rights, when you're taking away people's right to play sports, that doesn't seem like that's a uniting factor that at least I can understand. I don't know. Is that some kind of weird reverse uniting mind Jedi trick to take away people's basic fundamental rights and make them love you even more? Fuck out of here with this shit. No. You have a dilemma. And nobody's called them out on their dilemma until now. I just did. And I'll do it as many times as is necessary before they have to answer for their dilemma. Where and what do you want trans youth to do? If you don't want them to play sports at all, come out and tell the American public this. Come out and tell us you're a bigot, you're full of hate, you're full of division, you live in fear. Come out and share this with us. We really would like to know who you are. But hiding behind this pseudo oh, this is about fairness. Really? So that's the only factor that would inhibit someone from winning or losing? Their biological gender? Are you kidding me? If you're transgender in 8th grade, they're telling you your biological gender is the sole factor in why you might be winning or losing sports competition. Leah Thompson has lost as well as she's won. So how do you account for when she loses or when transgender youth lose in sports? Do you not pay attention or factor that in? That you win some, you lose some? Have we forgotten this whole concept? Since the lunatic from Mar-a-Lago has told us that nothing is fair because his ass lost? It would seem to be that would be the case. No, they're going to have to answer this. What and where do you want transgender youth to do in regards to sports? Seems like you don't want them to have their preference of where they choose to compete. Everyone else does. So it would seem to me you don't want them to play sports. Now we all know the sports, playing on a team, increases skills that are vital to being a productive and well-rounded citizen. You learn skills of collaboration, team building, how to manage victory and defeat. You build lasting friendships. You're saying none of these things should be principally applied to transgender youth in our society because you personally feel discomfort by their presence. This is what that boils down to. And we just cannot have that type of thinking. I'm sorry. We just can't. Solely because we've had it before. And it led to disastrous outcomes. So we shouldn't try what's already not worked. We should try what worked. Nobody says that Jackie Robinson breaking the racial barrier in 1947 in Major League Baseball was a failure. Why? Because you go to a baseball game and you see great diversity, great athletes, and you don't even think about what they look like. You cheer them on because they're the best at what they do. That's what sports is. Competition. It's inclusive competition of skill and ability. And if you can't cut it, you can't cut it. I'm sorry, I'm not about to be a wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm not about to be a quarterback. You either got the skills or you don't. In sports, it's one of the easiest realms and arenas where you can see the people who have it and the people who just don't have it. So if Leah Thompson wasn't a good athlete, she wouldn't win. She wouldn't even have her name mentioned. She's a good athlete, and she wins. That's what we should know about Leah Thompson. Being different is unique. But nobody just wants to be solely known as being different. Especially when they have skills. There's a lot of people that are different, but they don't always win. And I think part of this is envy of certain people. The Leah Thompson is already a winner, and they're losers who sit around and try to drag down a winner. Yeah, a lot of those people are real losers. All of that misogyny and bigotry, yeah, they're losers. They're bums. And what they try to do, because the old adage is true, misery loves company, they try to bring you down. But we're not going to let them. We're going to declare that Leah Thompson is a victor, a winner. And they're the losers. And they're just mad every time they see a winner. Let me know what they say about answering this dilemma, because I want to hear the answer to it. It's a simple question. Are trans youth allowed to play in sports? This is a simple yes or no. Don't try to complicate it. This is simple. Because they're trying to have their cake and eat it both ways. They're saying Leah Thompson already competed as a male and transitioned and now is competing in female athletics. But these youth in public school who have transitioned and have competed for years, well, they're banning them too. You can't say that little small kids have the same testosterone levels as Leah Thompson did. So I want to hear, even on a scientific level, your rationale for harming little kids. Leah Thompson is old enough to handle some of this on her own. And she's handling it very well. But these little kids, those are the ones I'm worried about. They're the ones crying that night that they can't play sports. Because grown adults are bigoted and mean-spirited and full of hate. Full of hate. And just a reminder, hate does not make you great.